Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I've got a extra special upload. A guest from Virginia is coming on and sharing a encounter his friend's family had on a farm they own with a Dogman. Before we get into that, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting, stories that they really don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. Now, I've taken enough of your time, guys. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Alright, everybody. Tonight I have a guest on. He lives in Virginia. He has been on before. He shared his encounter. He also shared an encounter that he heard from a flea market salesman. He's lived in his community most of his life, all of his life, and has a lot of friends, friends with a farmer. And about a month ago, Jerry told me this story, and I asked him if he wanted to come on and share it with everybody. So, Jerry, how are you today?
Pretty good, Jeffrey. How are you?
Not bad at all. So, me and you talk, and you were telling me about your friend who owns a farm. You want to share everything that went on there?
Sure. I'll share with the patrons and the listeners tonight. Sure will.
All right.
Well, people, tell me when.
You're ready.
All right, buddy. There's a lot of farming community down here, Jeff, around where I'm at. You know, and most of the industry was coal mining based and agriculture. And I've met quite a few people in my life, considering my grandfather was a farmer, and generations I know the family and the people and how they had come to hard to make a living, and there's lots of land in these people that I'm referring to. And a few months ago, they had problems with their animals being maimed and disappearing. They thought they just topped it up to normal aggravating coyote, as most people do. And they were being confirmed coyote kills on the place, but when things start to disappear, that's weighing near 100 pounds, a little less, a little more, and there's no unexplained explanation for the way these animals are disappearing, they started to look elsewhere. And a friend of mine got a hold of me, and I went over there, and I know these people. I know them personally. I don't know them well, but I know them personally. And I advised them, and my other friend advised them of what it possibly could be. Well, they asked me what to do, and I really didn't know what to do. I didn't want to get them in trouble. If it was this, I didn't want to get them harmed. So, I just told them, they need to think and talk and look on the internet and see what they can do. Well, things started getting worse. The chickens started disappearing even more, the sheep, and then when they started going for their number one bringer of the money, which would be down here, which would be beef cattle, that's when they really had to beef up their game. So they started hunting with traps and stuff like that to no avail. Well, then they started having firearms and stuff, putting them people up in the barn lofts on the corner of the meadows, at all evenings of the day, all days of the night, and paying people to watch for these things. And then it got up to the point that it got to where a guy shot at one, and he didn't know what it was exactly, but, they started shooting at things and stuff like that. Well, when the traffic got as bad as when they started clawing the houses, they found claw marks on the inside, on the outside of the barns, on the latches, in the pens where these animals were kept and taken away from. They got to the extent that they had to move their animals to a neighboring farm that they owned. And they started putting guns in every house. They live in a 2-story farmhouse, and it's an old farmhouse, but it's been well maintained and rebuilt over the years. There's 4 generations that have grown up in this house. And they're well-to-do. I mean, they have a lot of money, but they have more assets than they do anything. But every house that had a window had a firearm in the corner of the window or behind the door. When it got to the point that people, even their hired hands, refused to hunt with him anymore. So the father, which is an old farmer, an old man set in his ways, and his son, which is a junior, I can't use their name, went out there and they started setting up traps with bait. Well, they finally had some action, and they got close enough, and they had a special brand of ammunition that I'm not going to lay out on here because I don't want nobody trying this themselves and might not have the same success they may, but I'm not going to tell the store or tell the information that could lead to them getting hurt or made. But anyway, they found something that seemed to work for them. And his father held the light, and he pulled the trigger. Well, it hit the ground. It tossed, and it turned, and it hollered, and it screamed to the point that he'd never heard nothing like that in his life. When it was over and done, the animal was dead. But instead of taking it and burying it, burning it, dragging it up somewhere way far off from the land and where they lived, they wouldn't do that. The old man got greedy. Greedy to the point that he wanted this carcass for himself. He got the bright idea to mount this thing. So I got word of what they had done, and I went over there. Well, they used to carry dairy farm, Holstein cattle on that years ago, and run a dairy for milk. They have a dairy that is very well built and maintained with a concrete floor, full built steel foundation on the outside, and sheet metal as far as the outside of the perimeter goes, holding up the walls from weather and stuff like that. And they even have a basement in it. When I went over there, before they would let me in, the father asked his son to pat me and my fellow friend down that took me over there, that my friend took me, has known these people for over 20 years. They actually had his son pat me and him down to make sure we had no cell phone or electronic device that could record somebody talking or take any pictures of what we were possibly about to see. Once that was done, they undertook the lock off the hasp of the dairy. They walked us through the dairy to the right, and there was a door that led down in the basement where they used to keep a lot of supplies and stuff for the milk and parts for the machinery. They had it locked. It was double locked. Well, when they done that, it was a steel door. We went down 8 steps, and we're in the basement. And over in the far corner, there's no electric deep freeze. And not only is this thing locked, they have chains around. What they were thinking it was coming back to life, I don't know. But they had done the chains and the lock, and finally raised the door, and all I seen was a big long piece of black plastic in the bottom. Well, after I pulled back the black plastic, what was frozen, right there I'm face to face with a Dogman. A dead, frozen Dogman. I'm here to tell you, people and listeners, these things, no matter what people tell you, no matter what the government tells you, no matter these know-it-alls are sitting on the beach at the local drugstore meandering and talking about their Social Security increase and decreases, these things are very real, and they are flesh and bone. I have never seen something like this. It basically looked like an elongated coyote on steroids. The snout was extremely long and extremely full of teeth. Not the teeth that some say that should be comparable to a shark, or I didn't know nothing should have that many teeth. Nothing like that, but they were sharp. They were made for ripping, and that's no doubt about it. The ears were tall, not elongated like most people believe. They're straight on top of the head, and yes, they do have tufts of fur. But as far as being built like Hulk Hogan or built like a professional heavyweight wrestler or a boxer, they are not. This thing was cut, from what I could see. You could make out the muscle tone beneath the skin, but this animal probably looked like it. We estimated its weight at about 170 to 180 pounds, and from what I could tell, it looked like it stood, I'd say, a fair bit over 6 foot, maybe 6.5 feet, and it was something to be dealt with. I mean, it's not like they say in the stories, or not this one in particular, I don't know. But the old man was greedy and argued with the son back and forth that they think that they're going to take this animal and have it mounted. The son didn't want no part of it because his elderly mother, the old farmer's wife, and the grandmother still reside in that house, and he didn't want possibly to put his loved ones into danger. They'd done already run all over the farm barking and harping and howling and running around the house and clawing stuff to the point they were terrified. And he didn't want no more of this to escalate into possibly a whole family getting maimed and murdered, not to mention the grandchild, John Jr.'s son that was there, was just a young'un. They went back and forth, and finally they come to the term. He says, well, the old man told the son, if I can't find nothing by the end of the week or nobody willing to do the job and not publicize it, he said, you can take it and get rid of it. Well, they argued back and forth, Bifford, back and forth, and I mean, it was heated. Some of them, the two of the ones that I had seen. And it got to the point that John was fearing for his life and for the safety of his family. Well, it come down close to the end of the week, and his father had left the town to go a couple counties away to a livestock market and see what all the new animals were going to be brought in and bid on a few and see if they could get some new stock for the upcoming season. He made the arrangements while the father was away, him and their other personal friend of mine. They removed the body from the freezer, walked it up the steps, put it through the dairy barn, and brought it loaded in the back of the vehicle. And they took the body to a pasture a couple miles down the road. They own it too, to keep it away from there and return it. Well, what they did is they drove up to the top of the mountain to the end of the pasture where this land borders state forest, which is a wildlife preserve. And they removed the body. They had gloves. What he said they had gloves on, so they would leave none of their human sin on it. And they even put on plastic suits. Once they brought it out there, they removed the plastic from the body and left the body. Well, they went back a couple days later, actually, and the body was gone. It had been taken. There was pieces of fur, they said. It was all a few strands of blobs of fur, but as far as the carcass, the body was gone. He made the best decision. Well, when his father came back and learned of what he had done, I reckon he was very, very irate. And to the point, it got so bad, he just told him, he said, Father, are you so jealous and so conceited with what we had done that you want to recompense and risk our family for getting something mounted that should never be seen by human eyes? And finally, the old man shut up and seen, I guess, the error of his ways. But he's still very greedy. And to the point, to the people out there listening, these things are real. I don't want you to think that I'm lying, which I'm not. If you don't believe me, that's fine. That's the reason cryptid is not an exact science. Some people are for it, some are not. These things do exist. They are very real. That's the reason I'm not going to tell you the firearm used, what they used to bait it, and not the ammunition that was used to put it down, because I do not want our patrons and our listeners to be hard-headed and go out there and try this stuff. I don't want nobody else needs to go through what they did. This was a few weeks ago. As of today, they still hear the howling, and they still hear them running up in the brush because their pasture comes down to the end of the house, so a couple hundred yards. On a still day or still even the wind's night, you can hear the forest moving. And they can hear them right at dusk sometimes. They can hear them running through the edge of the mountain in the pasture. And late at night, they'll hear a couple howls here and there. But as far as the activity goes, it has settled down, I would say, some 80% according to them. Animals stop disappearing, which they've not brought back the full load of their animals. They're still keeping on neighboring pasture that they own and others that they lease. They brought back some animals to test that it can see, but none of them have disappeared as up today. But there's still a firearm in every door, in every room that has a window on a two-story farmhouse. And I reckon Gary's strapped and everybody else that they hire as far as hands over there on the tractors, on the trucks, on the equipment, the dozers, everything has access to a firearm in a hurry if it's needed. That is one of his rules from here on out. But that's what's transgressed down here, Jeffrey, as far as that goes.
Now, when you saw it in the freezer, I did ask you, because, you had shared this with me, at least 3 weeks ago, and I said, what color is its eyes? And they were frozen, but they were kind of like a milky what you could see? It was like a milky color?
Like a milky clear gold. I mean, they did have, they were on. What I could tell, they were still exactly what people said. They were a golden color, a very dark. But I think from the internals and the freezer and the body settling down, they were sort of a milky color, I guess, where they had laid in there and they had frozen.
Right.
But the eyes are big, and they represented what I could tell of most of the colors that people see. As far as the pupils glowing in the dark, I wouldn't have any idea, but the eyes are very much look almost like not like looking at a beer, almost at a beer in a mug, but just it had like a white creamy finish over it.
Yeah.
I see them like.
And I like the detail you gave with the teeth, how they weren't shark-like in rows and rows, but there were a lot of them, and they were sharp, and they were meant for, ripping and biting.
Right.
What was, how big would you say, like, the canine teeth were in an essay,
I would say the canines looked to be a good 2 inches or possibly longer. I mean, there was no denying they had the length. And the smaller molars toward the back, which in, most animals sort of have some a dull point.
Yep.
They were not dull at all, Jeffrey. I mean, unlike regular canines, these do have a very prominent point. I wouldn't exactly say needle point as far as that goes, but they are sharp. They're made for ripping and they're made for penetrating. But as far as the details, people saying that it looks like great white with a canine mouth and lips when it smiles, no. There's not rows upon rows upon rows of teeth. The teeth are there. They are prominent. They're big. They're definitely bigger than any canine species I've ever seen or ever had any contact with. But they are there. They're made for killing and they're made for ripping. It's nothing like some people describe as far as a upright walking piranha with rows of erectating teeth. No, it's not like that at all.
Right. Now, were you able to see the claws, the hands and claws?
Yeah.
Now, did they grow out like our fingernails, or how? Can you give us a brief description of what you saw?
The claws are not. That's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeffrey. The claws aren't like some witnesses say, all 3.5 to 5 inches long and hang down, and they're sharp as daggers. I would say the nails were a good 1.5 inches long, and these were claws, not nails. They were sort of like a dingy black, like almost like a sand color black. They wasn't polished. They wasn't fine, smooth, and would glow in the dark if the light hit them like a polished black diamond. They're nothing like that. They're like a dingy black, and they come to a prominent point, and they are sort of hook-shaped without the barb. And they're sharp, but they're not razor sharp like people have described. The very tip of a claw is where the damage comes. I've seen that immediately. And it is very pointed and sharp enough to penetrate, to rip, and to tear apart. But as far as having 3 and 4 inch Freddy Krueger, nightmarish, Nightmare on Elm Street claws, no.
All right.
Or not this one anyway.
Did you see the tail? Was there visibly? I mean,
Yeah,
I know
the tail.
I know it was wrapped up in a freezer, but you did see a tail.
I could tell, we opened it up so far as we could get, and the tail drooped down between the legs and come up over the left leg and was laying across it. Yeah, it had a very prominent tail. I'd say the tail was 2 foot long. Very, very bushy. It reminded you of a coyote tail, but not as puffy. It was big around, but not as puffy because, the hair didn't stick out at like a 35-degree angle. It turned more downward, like you would imagine picturing a tail on I would say more like a lab. A big long tail, how the bristles of hair sort of turned downward toward the end of the tail and not like straight out.
Yep.
And it was very long. I mean, and the hair is very, very coarse, very rough.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you how the hair felt like, because I've talked to one person, 2 people, and they've described the fur as being like pine needle coarse, like that. Not much softness to it, is there?
No, not very much at all. Matter of fact, what I've seen, the softest hair was around the face, and what the hair on the chest was the softest. As far as what was on the shoulders and going toward the backside, it was very rough, very coarse. What I would think be weather resistant. I mean, it's almost like rubbing up against Velcro. I mean, minus the sticky.
Right.
It's very rough.
Okay.
Coarse.
Was it a male or a female? Was that evident?
Oh yeah, he was a male. His junk was very, very noticeable.
Okay. Was it human-like? Was it
females out there?
Was it human-like or was it dog-like?
Yeah, it was more dog-like in a way, but it was sort of human at the same time. I mean, it's there. I mean, you have no problem finding it or seeing it if it's a male. His genitalia is present, right up there, soldier saluting style. I mean, matter of fact, I grew up on a farm all my life, and I hate to say it, but I will for the listeners. It would make some brown bull Russian mules cry for the size.
All right.
I hate to say it like that, but the truth is the truth. I mean, the body, as far as the most, like I said, it was cut, but it wasn't Schwarzenegger style, but anything that it lacked that other people may have seen, it made up for it when it comes to the downstairs junk, that's for sure.
All right. Now, where you had your encounter on your family farm, where relative to that farm is this farm?
I would say it is about, I would say 45 to 50 minutes southeast.
All right. And now you've been in the area. A lot of people say that Dogman or cryptid Sasquatch, werewolf, like to be where they can have a hiding spot, and they like to be around water. How close is water from this farm?
Actually, there's one of the main tributaries, a smaller river, runs through the property, as a matter of fact.
Okay. A lot of places to hide, would you say a lot of places to hide, or?
Oh, as far as hiding, it couldn't ask for a better place to hide. A lot of the places is covered up with vines, and a lot of there's laurel trees, crabapple thickets, weeds, rolling hills, tumbles, just a holler full of saplings. These things have no trouble in finding a place to hide. And plus, like I said, it borders, I think I'm not mistaken, the wildlife refuge is like 20-some thousand odd acres, and it stretches through 3 counties. And that's where their property borders, as a matter of fact. Okay. And that place is known for having caves, underground caving systems, old rundown plantations and barns, and railroads and timber factories that were once operating in the early 1900s. They have no shortage of places to hide.
Right. Now, the old man, the father of the young guy, he's in his 80s. Did he know what this was right off? Has he had?
Oh yes, not right off. He had heard and he suspected, but he told us young people, quote the language, "Oh, youngsters are full of shit." That's the way his take was. Until the animal hit the ground, and then when he found out what it was, he gets the bright idea to have this thing mounted for a trophy.
Right.
And put everybody in his family in jeopardy.
Now, where this farm is, how far away do you live from this farm?
I would say I'm probably 25 minutes from it, about, I would say 15 miles.
Because I know that you had a little not second run-in with one, but you've heard a lot of howling. I know there's you said there was water by you as well. One night something strange happened with, you heard a noise or something and your neighbor, you both kind of were looking out your door. You want to share that with us quick, or?
Sure. There's a river right just, I'd say, about 150 yards from where we live, and I heard something one night, kind of like it was on the roof. It jumped down, hit the porch, and then I heard a thump on the ground. The sound was so loud, my neighbor is about 40 feet from me, and when I pull the curtain back and look out, he's pulling his out and looking out too. And our eyes met. So whatever that was caused enough sound when it made contact with the ground with its body mass that two people can hear it from their houses. And I'm sad to say, in my opinion, it was probably a Dogman or some other kind of cricket. If I was to say what kind of cricket it was probably a Dogman.
Right.
Because I've heard them howling down the road here that comes to the end, and there's a bunch of private property out follows the river. And a few nights ago, I'm walking down the road, and I listen, and I can hear all kinds of howling. And then something cut loose. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they were cryptids fighting amongst themselves. They met with a pack of coyotes, dogs, or a bear or something. But there was a lot of sounds, a lot of barking, howling that sounded like to me screaming, some kind of animal. And this went on for just a few minutes to the point, it was getting closer. I mean, it got within a few hundred yards, so the sound was moving toward me. And I'm not brave, but I'm not stupid either. And I made my way back to the house very quickly.
Right. And you're not, you've been around nature all your life. I mean, right before we started recording, you were telling me about an incident you had last night with a bear, and...
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, where you live, there's a lot of wildlife, and, chances are maybe, like you just said, they might have met up with a pack of coyote or a bear or whatever. There's definitely some crazy stuff going on in Virginia, North Carolina. Just the South is just a bed of hot spot for it. And like you said, when you shared the flea market story, that people talk about it, older farmers and stuff talk about it like it's, privately in their home, like it's nothing.
It's normal coffee talk. I mean, they talk around among the dinner table every morning, these older farmers and older generations.
That's insane.
I mean, as far as, their grandparents and, our elderly's grandparents telling them and their parents telling them folklore stories, well, evidently folklore has a little bit of truth to it.
Yeah. Fiction comes from facts. So.
Exactly. And like you told me one time, Jeffrey, and I quoted your saying, I hope you don't have a copyright infringement on me, but you're the one that told me for every legend, there's an ounce of truth behind it.
Yep.
So I have to quote you on that, and you're very right.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing this with us. Not a problem. Found it very interesting that I think you shared it with me the night, the day before you went and saw the carcass. You had told me the story, and the next day you had shared, what you had seen. It's crazy. I'm just in my head picturing a little old farmer, ornery as can be, and, blasting this thing and wanting to keep it for himself. But like me and you had said, when you said they did this and it was in the freezer, I said they need to get rid of that thing. They need to bury it, burn it, or put it somewhere because they're not going to stop. And, you know, I mean, they stopped, but they really didn't. They're still lurking in those woods.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it's probably their stomping ground, or, you know, there's a lot of food, ample source of food and water for them. So hopefully they can just move along. And
well, Jeff, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, days before that, you know, Junior had took it upon himself to catch his dad gone and get rid of the corpse. It was still going on. I mean, actually it heated up to the point that they were starting to hear stuff on the second floor balconies leading into the house, running around the room, clawing at the siding, you know, stuff bouncing off the roof. They hearing stuff bouncing off the ground, and all to say about them manipulating a lock on a door or the doorknob. They do, because they did. Just luckily they had solid wood doors on this old farmhouse and deadbolt locked, because there was actually claw marks around the brass fittings of the doorknobs and claw marks through the pane in the door and on the door itself, where they actually tried to open the door.
Yeah, and we all know what happened. I mean, with Luke in Mississippi, I mean, they opened his door and cornered him while he was sleeping. And like you said, the kid, the farmer, the son of the old man farmer, you know, he's got his family there and his parents, and, you know, I mean, generations right there at stake. And I think they definitely made the wisest decision they could have. It's a crazy, crazy story, and I'm glad you agreed to come on and share it with us. I want to thank you for.
I'm glad that, you know, people are on the know, and they need to know. I mean, the government can cover up and lie and dismiss and say that we're smoking whatever and seeing something, but no, they're very much a reality.
Well, right on, brother.
So, you know,
you got anything else you want to share?
I'd like to tell to your listeners and our patrons and our fellow cryptid researchers out there, for the ones that don't believe, they are real, and for the ones that want to try to hunt and you want to see these or you want to kill one, don't attempt it. Think of your family, if not for yourself. Think of your family and your loved ones, because it's not worth getting up one morning, kissing your wife and patting your son goodbye and going to a day of work, because 9 out of 10 times you won't come back.
Right.
So please, people, practice a little common sense. There's nothing else. Just let them be. If nature and God and they decide they want to present themselves to you, they'll do it. If not, it's not meant to. So don't chance it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And, you know, there's been, I know there's 2 different accounts of farmers that have went to battle with them, one out west and one in the south somewhere, and both ended up not winning that battle. And you know, it's just something that you can't go up against unless you're prepared and you're willing to lose. So, Jerry, I appreciate you coming on tonight. I want to thank you very much, and say goodbye to everybody, and you stay safe, all right, brother?
All right, Jeffrey, I want to thank you for your time, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
What a incredibly terrifying encounter. I know when Jerry shared that with me, he shared it in 2 different phone calls. He let me know that the farmer and his son had taken it out, told me the beginning of everything up until, and then a day or 2 later contacted me and said, hey, I've seen this thing. I wanted to wait a little bit to kind of see what the repercussions of everything would have been, to see if, the acting out on the homestead and the animals would stop. They're still there, like he said, but definitely just something you don't really want to do unless you have to. I'm got a couple of other subscribers that are going to be coming on. I know that the deputy or retired deputy from North Carolina is going to be coming on shortly, hopefully this week. I know he was a little under the weather. I'm hoping to get another subscriber from Virginia on. He's just got to work his nerves up to come on, and I've got a good set of encounters and subscribers willing to share. So if you guys have an encounter that you want to share, either you want me to narrate it or you want to come on and share it, my email is in the description below. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And with that, I'm going to bid you farewell.